Discover the unexpected. Lonely CEO offers $500 for a day of surprising connection at the cafe. Jack stared at his reflection in the polished glass of his office skyscraper, the sun glinting off the city's skyline, casting an almost ethereal glow upon him. At 45, he had everything: money, power, the latest tech innovations, yet loneliness hung over him like a fog. He envied the homeless man he passed every day. At least that man had the warmth of human contact. It seemed absurd that, despite all his accomplishments, he felt so empty. Was this what success tasted like? He tossed his pen down, the sound reverberating against the silence. In that moment of frustration, an insane idea took root. What if he offered $500 to anyone willing to spend a day with him? The notion electrified him, twisting anxiety and excitement within, igniting a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd find something resembling companionship. Yet, as he crafted the ad and clicked post, unease washed over him. Who would respond? Why would anyone want to spend time with a billionaire? The stark reality nagged at him. Beneath the tailored suits and celebrity status, he was just Jack, alone and painfully aware of how rarely anyone asked about his thoughts, his fears. The idea of the cafe seemed hauntingly symbolic, a small stage for his internal theater of contradictions. Could he really dismantle the emotional barriers he had embraced for years with a simple offer? As hours morphed into restless minutes, Jack felt the weight of his dilemma pressing deeper into his psyche. Would he be seen for who he truly was, beyond the wealth, beyond the Instagram followers? Maybe he wouldn't connect at all. The thought clawed at him: what if he ended up with someone who made him feel even more isolated? The rush of vulnerability terrified him. He was losing the only semblance of control he had left. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The cafe buzzed with life, but in the corner, Jack sat like a specter, heart thudding with anticipation and dread. When Sarah entered, he felt an immediate tug. Here was someone completely different, someone who reminded him of the struggles and passion he had long buried under spreadsheets and quarterly reports. Their conversation began cautiously, but as they spoke, Jack felt the weight of authenticity stifling the chatter of superficiality that usually surrounded him. The more Sarah shared, the more Jack saw reflections of his own life in her struggles, and yet it felt too raw, too real. Each confession drew him closer to grappling with his own demons, each word from her mouth a catalyst for unearthing buried fears. But then it happened: a slip of the tongue, a careless comment that cut deep. The air shifted, tension thickened like smog around them. Jack felt his earlier warmth evaporate, replaced with the familiarity of isolation creeping back in. The fear of losing this fragile connection clawed at him, while questions about his privileged life surged. Why can't I just connect? Panic wove itself into his chest, blurring the cafe's sounds into a dull thrum. Sarah's expression shifted, the hurt evident, and for a moment, the world around them blurred into insignificance. Jack's internal battle threatened to consume him. He could retreat into his fortress of solitude or risk embracing the uncomfortable realities they both faced. The vast cafe felt smaller, the air thick with vulnerability, as external distractions faded momentarily. What would he choose? He needed to bridge this chasm, but doubt lingered, unresolved. Jack met Sarah's piercing gaze, the weight of silence hanging heavy. All at once, he was confronted with the fleeting grasp of connection against the looming shadows of loneliness. Who would blink first? The silence stretched, creating an almost tangible tension in the air. Jack's mind raced, processing the potential consequences of his next words. The idea of vulnerability was terrifying, yet it offered a corridor to genuine connection, a doorway he hadn't opened in years. Deep down, he knew he could talk his way through any negotiation, seal any deal worth millions, yet here he was, on the precipice of exposing his inner self. "Look," Jack finally managed, his voice quaking slightly, I'm not just a CEO. I'm just a guy looking for something real, something beyond this." He gestured towards the busy cafe, the laughter and clinking of coffee cups amplifying his solitude. Sarah seemed taken aback. Her initial response was a blend of surprise and skepticism. "Are you really just a guy, Jack?" she asked, her voice steady. "Or are you trying to escape the life you've built?" His heart sank as her words churned in his stomach. Was he truly trying to escape? Jack clenched his fists under the table, the force pushing him back into a defensive position. No, it was more profound than that. He was searching for authenticity, a pure interaction unfettered by wealth and status. But was he ready to confront his own truth? Jack could feel the weight of his professional life crashing against the flickering flame of sincerity that began to spark between them. "I guess I'm just tired of being seen as a brand," he admitted, his honesty catching him off guard. "I don't want to be valued for my title or my bank account. It feels hollow." The corner of Sarah's lips turned into a faint smile, softening the previously tense atmosphere. "Then stop. Just stop labeling yourself. Embrace what's human in you." The simplicity of her statement held power. In that moment, Jack realized how far he drifted from understanding his own identity. He had wrapped himself up in layers of luxury and success, concealing the raw fragments of who he once was, a passionate entrepreneur, clumsy at times, searching for significance beyond spreadsheets. "What does that even look like?" he asked, curiosity intertwining with his fear. "Maybe it starts here," she replied, nodding towards the cafe. "Maybe it begins with having the courage to express your insecurities, instead of wearing them as a shield." Jack felt an unanticipated surge of adrenaline. Was this what real connection felt like? It was messy, unpredictable, yet intoxicatingly liberating. He paused, searching for the right words. "I want to be honest with you. I want to dismantle the barriers, and maybe I need your help." "Then let us do it," she said, her voice unwavering. "But you have to commit to the process, Jack. This isn't a business transaction, it's real." His gut tightened with an exhilarating blend of fear and determination. Jack understood what lay ahead wouldn't be easy. Exposing his vulnerabilities might invite even greater pain, but also profound growth. With newfound resolve swelling within him, he leaned closer. "Teach me how to connect, not just with you, but with myself." As their conversation deepened, Jack experienced flashes of clarity, moments where the motives behind his relentless pursuit of success played like distorted echoes of his core values. In navigating this new terrain of honesty, he began to confront the messy contradictions of his life. But just when he thought they had found common ground, Sarah's face clouded with concern. "Jack, are you ready to hear some hard truths about yourself? Because the mirror you're looking into might show more than you're ready to embrace." The anticipation knotted in his stomach as he nodded slowly, feeling a ripple of dread and eagerness washing over him. The moment had arrived to peel back layers he thought were long buried, yet what revelations awaited him, and at what cost? As Sarah leaned in, the flicker of candlelight caught the glimmer in her eyes. Jack felt the intensity grow, the air between them thickening with unspoken truths. He could sense that the next few moments might fracture the carefully constructed walls he had fortified for years. For the first time, he questioned whether his identity could withstand the pressure of such scrutiny. "Here's the thing, Jack," she began, "you've built this empire around yourself, but who are you beneath all those achievements? This facade might dazzle the world, but I wonder if it's masking your true feelings." Each word pulsed through him like a driving force, oscillating between fear and a strange comfort. He realized the outer shell that reflected power was, in fact, a prison, a glossy cage that kept him isolated. "I don't know," he confessed, the admission rolling off his tongue as if he were letting go of a heavy anchor. "Let us find out together," she proposed gently. "Let us peel back those layers one by one. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about your past? Jack's chest felt tight. It was as if the whispered memories were tangible, clawing to the surface. My father. He was obsessed with success, too, always comparing me to his idea of achievement. I never felt enough. The words spilled out, unexpected and raw. Sarah nodded, her gaze unwavering. What did that make you feel? Like a failure, Jack murmured. The truth struck him brutally. I've been racing ever since, drowning myself in work, trying to prove that I am more than his reflection. He felt vulnerable, exposed not just to her, but to himself. The moment was cathartic yet terrifying, revealing emotions he had buried beneath spreadsheets, board meetings, and stock prices. Jack, do you think your perception of success has been shaped by his expectations? Her question hung in the air as he deliberated. Maybe. I mean, I don't want to disappoint anyone, especially him, Jack admitted, sensing the chains of obligation still locking him into a life crafted by someone else's dreams. Now apply that understanding. If your father's shadow looms so large, how can you carve out your own definition of success? She pierced through his defenses, pushing him toward introspection. As he mulled her question, feelings of confusion transformed into slight clarity. It was unsettling, but liberating, seeing the connection between his past and the persona he projected. I've equated my worth with my achievements. But what if that's incorrect? What if I don't need to chase that approval? Yes. That's the beginning of your journey toward authenticity. Let us define this together, not just for your sake, but for those who work with you, who look up to you, Sarah affirmed, her enthusiasm palpable. They need a leader who understands vulnerability, who embraces the human experience. As her words settled within him, Jack felt a surge of urgency, the pathway to change stretched ahead, glimmering with potential. Not just in his personal life, but at the helm of his company. Maybe, just maybe, he could redefine success in a way that allowed him to feel alive, creating an environment where honesty and authenticity thrived. Okay, let us keep going, Jack urged, excitement mingling with uncertainty. I want to explore more about what it means to let go of his voice and find mine. Sarah's expression shifted, focusing intently. Remember, it will not be easy. You'll face resistance not just from the outside world, but within yourself. His heart raced at the thought. What walls would he need to confront next? With a determination wrapped in a tapestry of trepidation, he leaned further toward Sarah, ready to venture deeper into the abyss of his truth, his vulnerability now a guiding light. He opened his mouth to speak, but a sudden cough echoed through the café, breaking the fragile moment. He looked around, distracted. What was that? Then an unexpected figure from his past appeared at the entrance, a name he hadn't uttered in years, a shadow from his former life stepping into the light. Would this presence derail his progress, or could it become a pivotal moment in his journey? The door swung open, and time seemed to still. Jack's heart sank, a heavy tide of memories crashing over him. Standing there was Eric, his former business partner, the very embodiment of everything Jack had tried to escape. Eric's demeanor radiated success, the kind that Jack had once chased relentlessly. A polished suit fitting like armor, hair slicked back, his smile was menacingly charismatic. Jack. Long time no see. Eric's voice sliced through the air, warm yet insincere. I heard you've been climbing the ladder. Looking sharp as always. He stepped inside, his presence darkening the cozy cafe atmosphere, drawing Jack's attention away from Sarah. Jack's mind raced. He hadn't prepared for this confrontation. Eric's this sudden re-emergence was unsettling, a catalyst that threatened to shatter the fragile clarity he had begun building with Sarah. The weight of the moment bore down on him, amplifying his awareness of how he had skirted the shadows of his past. Yeah, it's been a while, Eric, Jack replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. What brings you here? His voice was steadier than he felt. Oh, just passing through. You know me, always on the lookout for the next big deal, Eric said, glancing over at Sarah, his gaze filled with calculating curiosity. And who might this be? A new partner, perhaps? Sarah straightened at the inquiry, her eyes narrowing slightly. I'm interested in exploring ideas beyond traditional business paradigms. She held her composure remarkably well, but Jack sensed a subtle tension building between them. Aren't we all? But let us be honest, what's more important, philosophy or results, right? Eric leaned on the counter, his charisma palpable, but Jack felt a swell of indignation at the dismissive tone. With each syllable Eric uttered, Jack felt the air grow thicker. The past so readily available to tarnish the present. Results can be hollow if they come at the cost of integrity, Jack countered, surprising even himself. The words were unqualified and firm, contrasting starkly with the self-doubt that often cloaked him. Integrity is a luxury, Jack. You know that as well as I do. Eric's smile flashed again, and with it, the memory of countless late nights spent strategizing and sacrificing ethics for numbers flooded back. Jack had once reveled in that world, intoxicated by the rush of victory without considering what it truly meant and what it cost him. As Eric continued to talk about a new venture, a line of high-end tech startups merging ingenuity with profit, Jack noticed something else within himself. He felt a flicker of determination igniting. The confrontation was a pivotal moment pushing him toward his own truth. Was this the definition of success he wanted? Chasing after ephemeral rewards dictated by external validation. Have you thought about what it means to lead authentically, Eric? Jack interjected, allowing the unfamiliar confidence to breathe. Success is more than just numbers. It's about building a legacy. He could feel Sarah's gaze approving, a quiet whisper of encouragement against the tempest within. Eric chuckled, but there was a shift in his expression, a subtle tightening. Legacy is great until you get left behind. Don't be naive, Jack. The words curled like smoke around them, yet Jack felt a newfound clarity. The conflict laying bare the echoes of his past, igniting awareness of what he truly feared, falling back into a life framed by someone else's shadow. Suddenly, he realized that this wasn't just confrontation, this was an opportunity for growth, a chance to face his doubts head-on. Why don't we see whose approach actually leads to sustainable success? Jack suggested, a challenge woven into his tone. Eric's eyes narrowed slightly, surprise flashing across his otherwise smug face. You think you can compete with me? I don't want to compete, Eric. I want to grow. The stark truth hung in the air, vibrating with sincerity. This was new territory, and he could feel the shift prompting something deeper within him. As Eric measured Jack's words, Jack felt something crucial clicking into place inside himself. He was no longer that scared young man racing on his father's treadmill of expectations. Who he was now was someone free to interrogate, redefine, and, in doing so, empower others around him to embrace authenticity. But would Eric allow this shift to flourish, or was this merely the prologue to a much larger conflict? The cafe grew quiet, thick with anticipation, as Jack prepared for Eric's inevitable response. The air crackled with unvoiced challenges, blending past and future, propelling Jack toward an uncertain horizon. Would the past secure his freedom or threaten to swallow him whole? Eric's laughter sliced through the air, a sharp contrast to Jack's resolute demeanor. Grow. The disdain dripped from his voice. You have no idea what you're asking for. Growth in this world requires sacrifice every step of the way. You want authenticity? Go sell a few failed dreams to your legacy and see how far it gets you. Jack's gut churned at Eric's dismissive tone, heart racing with a blend of embarrassment and indignation. What was it about Eric that provoked so much anger and self-doubt? The realization struck hard. It wasn't merely Eric himself but the path Jack had once taken, one filled with ruthless pursuit of success at any cost. This moment wasn't only about Eric's taunts, it was an inflection point testing Jack's resolve to redefine success on his own terms. Success isn't just what you achieve, it's how you achieve it, Jack said, pushing against the swirling tension. Each word was carefully chosen, a blend of newfound determination and the intense need to free himself from his past. Growth can't just come from profits, it has to stem from genuine connections. From collaboration. Eric's laughter faded, replaced by a keen gaze that laid bare his competitive instincts. So you want to connect with your employees more? Bring everyone together under one campfire and sing Kumbaya. That's not how you win. Jack sensed the ridicule, but it no longer stung as it once would have. Instead, it felt like something to overcome. I'm not talking about some quasi-hippie notion, Eric. I'm talking about authenticity in leadership. It's more sustainable than any quarterly profit report you'll ever chase. It's investing in people, being transparent, making decisions that reflect values. The flicker of indignation transformed into something more powerful, a realization of his evolving identity. Just as Eric had taken the path of cutthroat ambition, Jack was crafting something entirely different, fueled by grounded purpose. It's about being remembered for something positive, something real. His voice grew steadier, the air around him seemed to shift as conviction seeped through. He could feel Sarah's gaze steadfastly on him, a silent dialogue building between them, lending strength to Jack's burgeoning confidence. He was carving out a new professional identity, one that didn't feel burdened by the ghosts of his past but rather enriched by the lessons learned. For a moment, he saw Eric in a vulnerable light, the charm, the bravado, the polished exterior, masking deep-rooted fear of being irrelevant. Jack recognized the intensity in Eric's eyes, shifting from arrogance to something akin to uncertainty. Was Jack striking a nerve? Perhaps being left behind isn't my greatest fear, Eric. Perhaps it's being void of true impact, Jack pressed, heart pummeling with defiance. Each word resonated louder as he spoke. He didn't want to erase the past, but he could learn from it and transcend it. Impact? Eric repeated, disbelief lacing his tone. This isn't a charity, Jack. It's a business. If you can't adapt, you'll be the one left behind. The words echoed as a challenge, freezing Jack in contemplation. They echoed precisely what he feared most, the daunting notion of becoming irrelevant. But then came a surge of realization: his value wasn't dictated by market trends or fleeting accolades. His worth stemmed from the authenticity he began to cultivate. I'm okay with being left behind if it means I'm pursuing meaningful connections over superficial gains, Jack replied, grounding himself in clarity. The approach I take matters far more than the outcome. How many leaders can say that, Eric? Sometimes growing means letting go of the past. Their tension-filled conversation hung in the air, and the café surrounding them felt almost electric. Jack had discovered an unexpected ally in his own voice, one that translated the brunt of his past pain into a powerful plea for an ideal future. And then, beneath the surface of their exchange, Jack wondered, what would happen if Eric saw the value in this shift? Could they find some common ground in this professional landscape? Could Jack navigate the complexities of reminding Eric that his worth was not the egotistical measure of success he so fiercely clung to? The palpable silence drew back as Eric opened his mouth to respond. Jack braced himself, energy crackling between them, ready to confront whatever came next. The air vibrated with unspoken potential. Jack could feel the pulse of the moment enveloping them. Would this be the moment that defined his next step, or would he falter, pulled back into the shadows of that familiar past he sought to escape? Jack felt the tight knot in his stomach as Eric finally broke the silence, his lips curling in a half-smirk. You really think you can lead with that soft approach? You'll end up with nothing but a group of dreamers who can't make real decisions. Jack forced himself to breathe, feeling a familiar surge of frustration at Eric's unyielding perspective. You think I want dreamers? I want people who are inspired. People who believe that their work has value beyond just numbers on a balance sheet. Each word fanned the flames of his conviction, energizing him against the direct confrontation he had anticipated. Eric leaned back, arms crossed, assessing Jack like a curious predator. And what if they still don't? The question lodged deep in Jack's mind. What if his new vision wasn't enough? What if they do? He countered, feeling the urgency of the moment. What if building a culture of trust leads to greater innovation? What if people are more driven when they feel like they matter? As if caught off guard, Eric hesitated. For a fleeting moment, Jack glimpsed doubt behind his steel facade. "You're playing a dangerous game," Eric finally said, voice edged with defiance. "You want to throw ink on the rules of the corporate world, and it's going to cost you. Don't be surprised when you find yourself in a corner, wondering where it all went wrong." Jack's heart raced at the dare. It was a personal challenge, rooted in fear and insecurity that he would indeed fail. But something inside him flickered with a reminder of who he was becoming. "Maybe I'll take my chances," Jack responded, confidence building as he spoke. "Maybe it's time for leadership to evolve. You talk about sacrifice, but what if the greatest sacrifice is risking nothing?" Eric's gaze hardened, but Jack sensed a shift. Eric was used to following a playbook of ruthless ambition, Jack was rewriting his own rules. In their exchange, Jack was inching closer to self-realization. He had to confront not just Eric but the fears that had once shackled him to conventional paths. As the pressure mounted, he felt Sarah's silent support. Her presence anchored him. "What's the worst that could happen?" he asked, challenging himself as much as Eric. "Is standing alone worth the chance to build something real?" Eric scoffed, yet Jack caught a glimpse of something deeper behind his bravado, a flicker of envy, perhaps. Or an acknowledgement that Jack might be onto something. "Standing alone means accepting your own shortcomings," Eric said quietly, almost pensively. Jack's breath hitched as the words sank in. This was at the intersection of his growth and Eric's skepticism. "Then maybe it's time to embrace those shortcomings, Eric," Jack proposed, leaning forward. "Maybe we're all a work in progress. But I'd rather be a progressing work than a finished product that's lost its purpose." Eric's eyes narrowed, but Jack saw the struggle in his expression. If he were to inspire change, he first needed to confront his own doubts, and perhaps, in turn, help Eric confront his. Their fates were no longer distinctly separate, they were intertwined in the ambiguous web of professional rivalry. "And if you fall flat on your face? What then?" Eric challenged, but there was no malice in the question, only intrigue. Jack smiled despite himself, the kind of smile that only came from genuine belief. "If I fall, I'll learn. But if I succeed, every individual in our company gains something of value." Authenticity, he paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the air. "I'd rather risk it all for something meaningful than play safe and watch others fade away." The tension settled into a contemplative silence, punctuated only by the soft murmur of the cafe around them. Jack had cast his line, and now all he could do was wait to see if Eric would take the bait. But as Eric stared contemplatively at his coffee, a question loomed larger than either of them could ignore: was the struggle for authenticity worth the undeniable risk of failure? The cafe's atmosphere shifted slightly, as if aware of their critical turning point, a vital moment that hinted at larger implications not yet realized. Jack took a deep breath, the tension thickening, feeling the stakes rise. Could his boldness transform not only his own trajectory but also shift the paradigm Eric clung to so desperately? And as the thoughts drifted within him, the realization set in: something vast and uncharted was unfurling, an opening he felt both terrified and exhilarated to explore. The next day, Jack sat at his desk, the morning sun pouring through the window, bathing the room in a warm glow. He stared at the empty calendar in front of him, the blank squares seeming to mock him. Plans needed to form, partnerships needed to develop, but yesterday's confrontation still echoed in his mind. Eric's skepticism mixed with his own self-doubt created a heavy cloud of uncertainty that threatened to stifle the boldness he had just begun to embrace. Jack was no stranger to the corporate world's expectations. He had spent years playing the game by its rigid rules, bolstering his career with calculated moves. Yet here he was, redefining those rules in search of a more human-centric approach. Yet, this new path came with its own risks. Each decision felt more consequential than the last. Taking a deep breath, Jack pulled out his notebook. Writing had always helped him clarify his thoughts. He began with the question that had plagued him: what did he truly want to achieve? It wasn't merely about leading a successful team, it was about creating an environment where people felt valued and empowered. He decided to implement a new initiative, one that could form genuine connections among the staff. Thinking quickly, he wrote down his idea: a casual meeting at a cafe, designed not just to discuss work but to bond, to share their stories, and to redefine what team meant. He envisioned inviting his team for an open discussion, promising a small incentive lunch would be on him. The quiet clink of his pen was interrupted by a notification. A text from Sarah popped up. "Thinking of you today. Hope you're standing firm. Let me know if you want to talk." Her unwavering support reignited the smoldering embers of Jack's determination. He could feel optimism beginning to replace doubt, but he knew he needed to instill that same confidence in his team. It couldn't be about him alone, he had to create a space for everyone's voices. With newfound resolve, Jack began drafting an email to the team, crafting his invitation with care. He wanted it to resonate with a sense of purpose, to invite his colleagues to share their perspectives without fear. It was time to break down silos, to foster friendship alongside professionalism. He added a playful note at the end: "Perhaps we'll even brainstorm how to overthrow an old regime, wink." As Jack pressed send, a wave of anticipation washed over him. He could imagine how the conversation would unfold at the cafe. He hadn't completely abandoned his fear, it still danced in the peripheries of his mind. Yet he was beginning to realize that uncomfortable conversations often sparked the most significant changes. The day rolled into afternoon, and with every passing hour, anticipation swelled. Would anyone show? Would they resonate with his vision? In the back of his mind, Eric's words loomed. What if they still don't? But as doubt threatened to creep back in, Jack silently countered: what if they do? What if they connect in ways we've never seen before? At the cafe later that day, authenticity hung in the air like the aroma of fresh coffee. Jack sat at the designated table, surveying the surroundings. The chatter of guests morphed into a subtle soundtrack of heartbeats and hopeful whispers. As faces appeared in the doorway, the knot in Jack's stomach transformed into a buoyant energy. One by one, his colleagues settled in, uncertain but curious, and Jack felt the contours of his vision begin to take shape. This could shift dynamics beyond just the office, it might alter how they approached life and work. But as conversation started and laughter intermingled with discussions, he realized that deep down, this was more than professional stakes, it was personal. His own journey of transformation entwined with theirs, leading him to confront the ultimate dilemma: would he be able to remain vulnerable while guiding them through this change? Just then, Eric crossed his mind again, an anchor to his internal turmoil. Jack wondered how he might turn skepticism into support. Perhaps the greatest challenge lay not only in how he led but how he taught others to trust in the process. This thoughtful moment was interrupted when a hushed voice called out, "Hey Jack, is this where we finally overthrow an old regime?" The laughter bubbled to the surface, and Jack realized he stood at the precipice of something unexpected. Feeling a flicker of hope amidst the laughter, he braced himself for the revelation that lay ahead: could he truly lead a movement of authenticity, one that even Eric might come to respect? The cafe buzzed with energy, the possibilities both exhilarating and daunting, as Jack prepared himself for whatever might unfold next. As conversations flowed around him, Jack felt the initial tension begin to dissipate. Colleagues shared not just ideas but stories, every laugh unveiled layers of personality he hadn't encountered in the confines of the office. Yet the irony of it all struck him: was it really this simple? Here they were, discussing dreams over cappuccinos, and Jack couldn't shake the weight of Eric's cynicism from his mind. "Jack, what's your take on the new project?" Lisa asked, pulling him from his reverie. He glanced around the table. Everyone leaned in, attentive and engaged, but the responsibility of leadership started to settle heavy on his shoulders once more. Before he could respond, he heard Eric's voice in his head again: "They see through it, they always do." Jack cleared his throat, grounding himself. I think we could redefine our approach, he began, and perhaps blend what each of you values most about your roles. In that moment, he saw nods of agreement, and it fueled a spark of courage within him. Let us empower each other to take ownership of this project. What do you think? Great idea. Someone chimed in excitedly. We could break into smaller teams and brainstorm individually. It might help us integrate our styles better. As discussion ensued, Jack's heart raced. He steered the conversation, but it felt like more than just sharing ideas, he was sculpting a new culture. The initial camaraderie transformed into something more, a collective sense of pride at the prospect of collaboration. It hit him, they were not simply co-workers, they were a community with shared aspirations, unfulfilled potentials, and most critically a collective heartbeat. This wasn't just about workplace efficiency, it was about emotional investment. Jack shifted in his seat, spurred by an impulse to deepen the connection. You know, I like to think of our team as a family. A family challenges each other but ultimately supports each other. What's a challenge you feel you're facing that the rest of us can help you with? The question hung in the air. A mix of surprise and contemplation danced across faces. Finally, Emma raised her hand tentatively. I struggle with feeling like I can bring my full self to work. I often feel I have to suppress parts of my personality. Jack's heart ached with recognition, he, too, wrestled with that fear. You're not alone, Emma. I often feel that pressure too, he confessed, realizing that it was time to tread deeper waters. What if we dedicate some time in our upcoming meetings to check in with each other's well-being? A simple question like how are you really doing? Might transparently address the unspoken yet felt. As others chimed in with their perspectives and reservations, Jack felt a rustle of exhilaration run through him. This was the vulnerability he craved, shifting from his previous narrative to one where collective trust lay at its foundation. But Eric's skeptical gaze loomed in the back of Jack's mind. He questioned if this experiment could transcend the cafe atmosphere back in the rigid office setting. What if it floundered under the confines of corporate pressure where time was currency and collaboration was seen as a hindrance instead of an asset? With renewed resolution, Jack felt the urgency to solidify this momentum. Tonight, he'd craft an email recapping their breakthroughs, emphasizing their collective agreement to make this culture thrive. But just as he returned to the pleasant banter around him, a thought pierced through a very real fear. What if he was making promises he couldn't keep? What if this newfound openness began to err towards chaos rather than cohesion in the structure of their work? As the laughter tapered off and conversations shifted, Jack gathered his courage to ask, so, what are we willing to risk to bring this connection back to the office? Unbeknownst to him, Eric had stepped quietly into the cafe, taking in the sight of his colleagues passionately engaging with Jack. His brow furrowed as he weighed the authenticity of Jack's approach against the pragmatic realities of leadership. Jack sensed something had shifted but didn't know how deeply he would need to confront the realities of Eric's world to either win his respect or solidify his own vision. As the cafe lights dimmed, he realized that the journey had only just begun, and soon he would have to face a pivotal choice that could either solidify his newfound path or unravel it entirely. As Jack drifted home that evening, thoughts surged wildly in his mind, crashing against his resolve like turbulent waves. That conversation had opened a door, but the reality of navigating back to the office weighed heavily on him. His vision, however vibrant, seemed at odds with the rigid structure he had grown accustomed to. Would his colleagues truly be willing to embrace the vulnerability he sought to foster? The next morning, Jack sat at his desk, staring at the blinking cursor on his screen. He felt the weight of the email he was drafting, each word a potential thread linking his team to an uncharted territory of openness. But was he ready? The thought of hitting send was daunting. Questions flared in his mind, doubts seeded by Eric's skepticism whispered, pulling him in a different direction. Would they dismiss his ideas as impractical? Jack could almost hear Eric's voice, that dismal blend of realistic concern he had learned to ignore over time. Torn between the hope for deeper connections and the fear of ridicule, he hesitated. Taking a deep breath, he decided to step outside, the chill of the day contrasting sharply with his simmering thoughts. The office complex loomed ahead, a fortress of glass and concrete, where laughter often felt like a distant echo. As he walked, Jack stumbled upon an unexpected sight. A small café tucked away on a side street, unassuming yet lively, brimmed with conversations and laughter, a microcosm of the very community he had longed for at work. Jack felt a spark of inspiration. He would channel this experience. Returning to his office, he tapped out a succinct email. "Let's meet for a team-building session at the café today." His finger hovered above the send button, uncertainty gnawing at him until he cast it away. With a flick of his wrist, he sent the message and felt a surge of boldness. This felt right, not just as a leader, but as someone genuinely invested in fostering a new atmosphere. He envisioned the laughter, the collaborations, the informal brainstorming sessions held over steaming mugs illuminating the possibilities they had long shied away from. The responses flooded in, excitement palpable through the screen. Then Eric piped in with that familiar hesitation. "Change is destabilizing. Are we sure about this?" Jack's heart sank, but rather than retracting into defeat, the anticipation of this small venture overshadowed Eric's shadow. He replied, "Change is the first step towards growth. Let's take it together." As the day wore on, the clock was an anxious reminder of the ticking minutes until they would gather in the café. He arrived early to set the ambience, hoping that the space would shrink the hierarchy he felt so keenly at work. When the others trickled in, Jack felt electricity in the air, a sense of anticipation hanging like the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Conversations quickly sparked, and Jack watched as hesitant smiles transformed into enthusiastic exchanges. The openness he had longed for began to surface, and it made his heart race with a vivid cocktail of excitement and fear. In that moment, with laughter inundating the small space, he felt a shift like never before. But as he basked in this communal joy, a part of him couldn't shake the nagging thought: was this an illusion? Could this warmth truly extend back to the office? Just then, Eric stepped into the café, arms crossed, skepticism etched on his face. The contrast felt jarring. Jack's courage wavered at the sight of his colleague's discontented stance. Would Eric see this as a distraction rather than a means of genuine improvement? The moment bore down on him, and Jack knew the time had arrived to confront not only Eric but also the crux of his own ambitions, questioning whether he could defend this newfound culture he'd started to peek into. Determined, he stepped forward, poised to face Eric. Would he find someone willing to engage, or was this journey destined to lead to conflict in the face of tradition? Jack took a deep breath, grounding himself in the reality of the moment. He had come so far in such a short time, yet the specter of doubt still lingered, manifested in the figure of Eric, an embodiment of the past Jack was desperately trying to leave behind. As Eric stood there, arms crossed, that familiar air of skepticism cloaked him like an unwanted mantle. Jack knew that this moment could be defining, either a resounding affirmation of the progress he had made or a perilous return to the shadows that once dominated his life. "Eric," Jack began, his voice steady but calm. "I appreciate you coming here. This space isn't just about casual chit-chat, it's about changing how we work together, about creating a culture that values each person's contributions." Eric raised an eyebrow, the hint of amusement dancing behind his incredulous facade. "Culture, Jack. This isn't some feel-good seminar. People want results, not warm fuzzies. You really think bonding over coffee is going to change anything?" Jack could feel the stirrings of anger rise, but he quelled them, anchoring himself in the recent revelations from his time with Sarah. "What if I told you that people are at their most productive when they feel connected? The world is evolving, and so should our approach to leadership. It's not just about hard metrics, it's about fostering trust and collaboration." He could see Eric shift slightly, the tension in his posture relaxing just a fraction, as if he were trying to comprehend the shift in perspective Jack was proposing. The café buzzed around them, and Jack gestured towards the smiling faces of their colleagues mingling, sharing ideas, and laughing in ways that would have been unimaginable in their corporate boardrooms. "This," Jack stated, is the future of leadership. It's authentic, it's shared, and it's powerful. For the first time, Jack saw a glimmer of uncertainty flash across Eric's otherwise stoic expression. And what happens when the results don't come? Eric asked, his tone softening slightly. Can you still keep turning a profit while chasing this connection? Jack felt his heart race, not with fear but with confidence. This is about something much deeper than profit margins, Eric. It's about legacy. If we build a team that feels valued, we will not only innovate, but we will thrive. People don't just want to clock in and clock out, they want purpose. Look around, he urged, gesturing to their colleagues. These are not just employees, they are minds brimming with potential. Let us harness that. Silence flowed between them, punctuated only by the laughter of their team nearby. Jack could feel the weight of their gaze, the understanding shared among those present. He had opened the door to vulnerability, and now it was Eric's turn to step through, to meet him halfway. Finally, Eric uncrossed his arms, a tentative smile creeping across his lips. I get it, Jack. You might be onto something. But leading like this is going to take time. Yes, it will, Jack replied, relief washing over him. And it will mean embracing discomfort. We cannot go back to old habits if we want to break new ground. Jack felt a surge of satisfaction, a recognition of his own growth. From merely seeking approval to embodying the very values he championed. He held Eric's gaze, seeing the flickers of doubt subdue as acceptance bled through. When lunch concluded, feedback flowed freely, everyone more engaged than he could have imagined. Ideas bounced around like popcorn, and Jack found himself smiling at the transformations he was witnessing. Colleagues were not just collaborators but friends, unearthing passions that had previously gone unnoticed. The conversation shifted, and by the end of the day, Jack had more than just a compelling discussion, he had stirred the hearts of those around him. They rallied behind the new initiative, blending ideas that reshaped their project layouts. Jack wrote streamlined plans based not on hierarchy, but on communal input. Days turned into weeks, and Jack could feel a palpable change seep through the organization's fabric. Productivity soared while the typical drafts of discontent began to fade. He established a recurring café dialogues that emphasized vulnerability, authenticity, and the necessity of collective ownership. The once stifling atmosphere was now alive with creativity, lifting the team morale above their competition. Then came the moment of recognition. As Jack stood at the quarterly company meeting, he delivered a report filled with incredible statistics. The numbers soared, but what filled his heart even more were the expressions on his team's faces. Eric watched from the back, a quiet acknowledgement etched into his features. He had seen Jack's ideals morph into action, leading to more than just profits. As Jack concluded, he pointed out his team's achievement, each person's contributions. We didn't just aim for results, we cultivated a culture. Our successes reflect our unity and the connections we built together. The applause that erupted felt different, electric with genuine solidarity. Jack felt the lights of personal achievement blaze within him. He had transformed, confronting his fears, dismantling the barriers erected by his past, and emerging as a leader not driven by power, but by purpose. Later, as he stepped into the cafe that had fostered this journey, Sarah joined him. You did it, Jack. She exclaimed on seeing him. You turned doubt into unity. I just embraced who we're meant to be, he replied, his voice a blend of pride and humility. And learned that the risk is worth it when it comes to authentic connection. Jack knew this wasn't the end, but merely the doorway to a vibrant living legacy that was finally beginning to take shape, a testimony to genuine leadership. He had not just conquered his inner demons but forged a path towards substantive meaning, a transformation that would leave a lasting mark on everything he touched. So, what now? Jack looked around, knowing he would continue to cultivate authenticity, inspire vulnerability, and embrace every challenge, facing his future not with fear but with undeniable confidence. And now, for all those witnessing this incredible journey, this is your moment to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show you're part of this transformation journey. Comment your reactions and theories about Jack's growth and what you would do in his shoes. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to embrace their own transformations. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting this channel through these actions.